So let's continue. Our final speaker for today, Brian Curtin, director of Python 65 Foundation, with the hottest theme about Python 3. Welcome, Brian.
Hello everyone, my name is Brian Curtin. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, in the US. Thanks a lot for the organizers to bring me out here. Talk to you about Python 3 and what's going on. It's been out for a couple of years now. Hopefully everyone's gotten a chance to look at it. Raise your hands if you've played with Python 3. Cool. Closer? Okay. Sorry for that. So I'm here to kind of say what's going on with it over the years. So a little bit of background on myself. I'm a core developer of the CPython project. Haven't been too active lately, but I got started in 2009 contributing. I became a committer in 2010. Through that work, I had kind of hooked up with a couple people who run PyCon. Jesse Miller became a good friend of mine. I worked on the PyCons in Atlanta and Santa Clara, and I've done publicity coordinator type stuff and blog posts and help on the conference. And through that, I became involved with the Python Software Foundation. And shortly after that, I ran for the board and was elected to the board. And so I served the community by, trying to make sure everyone in this room is represented and make sure that the funding that we have gets to all the right people and we do good things, basically, for the community. And a little more of my background in that, in terms of being a Python user. When I was a kid, when I was still in high school, my father tried to teach me Python. He's been a software developer for a long time, and I wanted nothing to do with it. So I didn't want to do programming, I didn't want to learn Python. I said it was something I didn't want. And then, of course, a couple years later, I ended up studying computer science. Been using Python since 2004. After finishing school, I became a professional software developer in 2006, and a couple years later, started using Python 3 in 2009. So it came out in December of 2008, and 3.0 was superseded by 3.1 roughly 6 or 7 months later. For the 3.1.1 release is when in August of 2009 approximately, when I started using Python 3. I used to develop internal QA systems for a finance company. Had around, let's say, 20 to 25,000 lines of pure Python and something like 7,000 lines of C extensions that in a matter of probably a day or two, ported to they worked on about 2.6 and then I made them work on Python 3 and I just started doing that. It was pretty easy and it kind of got me involved and it was really cool. So. Additionally, in terms of stuff I've done with Python 3, I used to work for Canonical and ported a lot of the Ubuntu 1 project, not a lot of it, portions of it to Python 3 towards the end of 2012. So I've been using Python for a while, especially Python 3, and we'll talk more about kind of where things are at. So a lot of times people, if you think back to early in the Python 3 phase when Guido van Rossum had said that there was a kind of 5-year plan of things being ported over, and we've already passed that point, and a lot of people wonder why isn't everything on Python 3? Well, it really wasn't the intent that everyone in this room is always using Python 3 for everything. It was more that a lot of the core things that are out there that people are building on, like NumPy, would be on Python 3, and NumPy has been on Python 3 since 3.0 or 3.1, so it's been a good couple of years now. Those are good base of things to build on. So, in general, I'm going to say that I think we're on a good pace. It's a good thing. I'm going to have some numbers here that we're going to back that up with. So as far as looking at Python 3 and how it's doing, and who's using it and where it's being used, one of the couple small metrics we have are looking at the download numbers for the Python installers. And as you know, if you use a Mac or a Linux machine, typically you get that from your distribution or the OS vendor or in some other form. So no one's really going to python.org and downloading the tarball to install on their Ubuntu machine. They're getting it apt-get, or it's just in there by default. On Windows, that's not the case. If you want it, you have to get it. Whether it's you as an individual user or something you're building, or it's part of an installer or something like that, they're all downloaded from python.org. And the numbers I'm going to show are not indicative of individual people. Again, this could be anything that's consuming it, so and someone had set that up, so whether it's a build system or whatever it is, it's kind of indicative of a trend of where things are going, because people want to be done and they're not just down for no reason. And where the data I'm about to show comes from, it's from the old Python website. So hopefully you've seen by now that python.org, roughly a couple months ago, was rebuilt, redesigned. Because of that, all of the logging and all that kind of stuff is a lot different. So one thing these don't cover is Python 3.4, which came out a couple months ago. But the old logs have all the data from 2006 to the end of 2013. And you can find that stuff at legacy.python.org/webstats. Webalizer was what was going over the logs and producing a bunch of download numbers. So I have a script that just runs through that, puts out a CSV of the download counts per month, based on the type of file it was, based on per version of an installer. So if you look at the first year of any given release, since these have been collecting, 2.5 is the oldest version that has been collected, that has the full first year of it. Came out in September 2006. The log was there shortly before that. In the first 12 months of 2.6, it was downloaded a little over 5 million times in that year. 3.0 came out. 2.6 and 3.0 were the next ones to come out after that. 2.6 jumped to a little over 10 million. While 3.0, which at the time was very experimental, it was kind of a really new thing, and it also was basically killed 6 months later, saw just under 4 million downloads. Right after that, a little over 5, so 3.1 was roughly the same as 2.5 in its first year. 2.7 was roughly the same as 2.6, and that was around 10 million. So 2.6 to 2.7 is at a high bar of being down around 10 million times the first year. 3.1 and 3.2 were so-so, about half of that. 3.3 is the first one to eclipse that, going to a little over 13 million in the first year. And that kind of matches what a lot of people have been saying with 3.0, was so-called experimental, it kind of came out, it had to be rewritten, the arrow system had to be rewritten in C. It was brand new, didn't get a lot of traction. 3.1 picked up, was a lot better. 3.2, the same. A lot of people had said originally, don't write production software on 3.0 or 3.1. 3.2 changed that. 3.3 is actually, appearing to be better than 2.7 in terms of popularity and interest. It'll be interesting to see what 3.4 looks like as well once we get those logs. I'm going to talk about in a second what they're going to do with that. But 3.3 is ended up being very popular. So it's a good indication that people are interested in 3.3, and 3 in general, and new releases have been adding more features. So we just looked at this on a chart. You can see that the older ones that were not really production ready skipped it. 3.2 never really got over 600,000 downloads, so it didn't make it on here. But if you look at the first 4 months in, 3.3 shoots up to under 1 million, quicker than anyone else, kind of outpaces the rest of them. So it maintains over 1 million after 6 months in. 2.7 hits just under 1 million. Look at the last year in terms of look at 2013. There were a total, across all possible versions, almost 35 million downloads. About 2 million of those were for 2.6, in which the last installers were from 2.6.6 from 2010. So people were still downloading really old 2.6 versions just to get installers because it was moved to security releases. the more important thing we can show out of this is that over the course of 2013, 48% of all downloads were for a Python 3 version. So roughly half of what was being downloaded was Python 3. And a lot of people always say, no one's using Python 3, no one likes Python 3. But basically half the downloads for Windows, which again is only one small metric, but it shows that there's interest there in Python 3. Another interesting fact I found while pulling these up, Python 1.5.2 was downloaded 100,000 times in 2013, and that hasn't been seen in release in God knows how long before I started with this. It's 0.2% of all downloads. And if you look, I look back at 2011 and 2012, they were roughly a 70-30 split. 70% of the downloads for 2x and 30% were for 3x. 2013 evened that out. So it's interesting again to see what happens in 2014 with the newer logs and see where we're going. I think it's a pretty good trend that 3 is really hitting a tipping point in terms of people, there's an interest, not so much in terms of use, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, but it's getting up there. So in terms of like package availability, so we talked about downloads, where that interest lies. If you look at what's available on the Python package index, there are currently 5,859 packages which support some version of Python 3. When you look at a package on the index, there are classifiers that are set. For one, they're optional, so people could be supporting Python 3 and not actively setting them. That's probably a rare situation. We know that the numbers are going to be super high, but a lot of tools that have checks for Python 3 support generally check just the classifier for its language, Python 3. A lot of people actually set the specific versions, but don't set 3 in general, so they say they support 3.3 and 3.4, but not 3. One of the standards, Garrett Randall had written a website that watches the trends with what's available, and it just checks the Python 3. That has shown that about 10% as of roughly this month or so, the package index has 10% supported Python 3. Actually, if you look at it in terms of all possible versions, and I'm kind of jumping out of here, sorry. Let me jump back. There are 44,000 packages listed on the index, of which those almost 6,000 support Python 3. All of them comprise for about 91 million downloads over the course of the last month. And of those, 13.5% of them support one of those Python 3 versions, whether it's generically 3 or 3 point something. And that's where the 10%, so we get actually a couple percent if you look for a more accurate version number. If you look at the top 200 downloads, which if you see any of these kind of Python 3 wall of superpowers or any of those websites that kind of track the red and green of what supports and what doesn't, those, if you again look at the more in-depth versions, almost 76% of them support Python 3. So it's a little bit better than it was a couple months ago, certainly better than years ago. So the trend is definitely changing towards Python 3 is being supported. And one thing that these logs, again, don't show, that I'm hoping to get access to, like the PyPI logs on the server that show more recent pip versions, give better user agent strings and better details about where things are installed from. So all this says is availability. It says that someone felt the need to make their package support Python 3. They probably didn't do that for no reason, so they have to have some amount of users. The users are actually kind of small, but those things are out there. Looking at the last year of what happened on PyPI, 44% of all downloads, all packages, had a release in the last year. Of those, they represent 82% of the downloads. So most of the things are downloaded are more recent than recent. Of those ones that had a release, 22% of them support Python 3. So the more recent packages, the more popular packages, we're coming on close to 25% of them supporting Python 3. It's also interesting that roughly 40% of the packages on PyPI have not had a release in 2 years. 16% of them have not been released in 5 years. So there's a lot of stuff on there that's fairly old. Some of it approaching the time when Python 3 wasn't even around. These ones in the last 5 years are certainly in that case, or nearing that case. So you might even be able to say that close to somewhere in the 80% range are only relevant to count in the Python 3 kind of era. Again, if you look at the ones that haven't had a release in the last 4 years, 15% of them support Python 3. In the last 3 years, 17% of them, and 19% in the last 3 years. So each year that Python 3 has been out, it's certainly been a growing trend of availability, and from the last year, it spiked up to that 22. So I think we could see in the next year, it could be in closer to 30, given how these numbers have grown. Especially given how, if you like Andrew's talked about, async I/O and see the popularity of 3.4, just kind of around the web, I think it has a good chance of people picking it up. If you look at the last month of things on PyPI, roughly 10% of the PyPI packages are downloaded under 500 times a month. I'm sorry. I'm reading my notes first, sorry. So almost 70% of packages are downloaded under 500 times. 10% of those support Python 3. I'm screwing myself up here. So half of the Python 3 packages are in that bottom group that have those downloads, or 500 downloads. There are also a decent number that have 0 downloads whatsoever. A little over 350 packages that support Python 3 have not been downloaded at all in the last month. Another thing to look at in the last month, that the 6 package, which you would only be using if you cared about Python 3, it's the compatibility between 2 and 3 let you straddle easier and aliases and a lot of nice things. Downloaded 1.5 million times, making it 7th most overall. That's actually pretty interesting because the 6 that are above it include virtualenv setup tools and distribute, which using no matter what. Virtualenv is also more of a tool than anything. It doesn't totally matter what version it runs itself. The 3 kind of app level things that are above it are certify, WinCert store, and requests. I think we all probably knew requests was going to be up there. I was not actually familiar with certify and WinCert store. It's also cool that the second most downloaded one is a Windows package, which is kind of funny because people also say no one uses Windows. This kind of leads me to where's 2.7 going with all the trends of 3 being more popular. It's actually not really going anywhere. If you have seen any of the Python Language Summit notes, it's going to be supported until 2020. It's another 6 years. It was released in 2010, so it gets a significantly longer life cycle than most of the versions. If you look at the other versions from 2.5 all the way up, they roughly last around 18 months to 2 years before they hit security release cycle, so they don't receive active bug fixes, and then we just kind of move on. The decision was made to have 2.7 live on longer, as we try to make things easier for people that straddle the line between 2 and 3. It's just people are using 2, we know that. We can't really abandon them now, so it's going to continue to be supported. Additionally, commercial vendors are also supporting Python 2.7 for quite a long time. Red Hat, which has not yet released Enterprise Linux 7, I believe. It's still going to have 2.7 is going to be the default Python in there, and that's going to live to at least 2024. You always buy longer support contracts, so Python 2.7 will potentially live forever. So it's not moving as fast as Python 3 in terms of growth, but it's actually going to move a little bit. 2.7.7 was just released over the weekend. So that final release, and typically, so it had a couple of exceptions that were made to that release that were not typically granted of previous releases in terms of new features and backports happening in later point releases. PEP 466 made a bunch of leeway for security enhancements after the whole Heartbleed situation, and also just in general to make sure that while we're going to support Python 2.7 for the next 6 years, we can't really leave those users out to dry in terms of security issues. So that extended that and made sure that as people continue building apps on 2.7, hopefully they're looking towards 3, but we're not going to make it so another Heartbleed happens and you're kind of screwed. Another PEP that happened was PEP 434. It's not really instrumental in terms of the release, but it kind of sets the groundwork for the ability to have parts of Python 3, Python in general, that are not so much tied to the release schedule in terms of features. So idle was allowed to have features added in other versions because it's more of a tool. And I think we'll see that with other things as well, where they're able to prove that in order to make 2.7 better, we could potentially add features to them. Remains to be seen where that's actually used besides idle. One place it was actually used by myself was backporting a feature from Python 3.3 in the Windows installer, where you're able to add the path, the system path to add the Python install in there, so you can actually just type Python and get the Python installed. That's been tough for new users, and we were only, because 2.7 was originally closed off to new features, it was added to Python 3.3. The case was made that 2.7 is still heavily used in education. It's a lot of people are using it for the first time. So there was an exception made where I was able to backport that, and that made it in there. So I think there's a possibility that we're going to see more, at least of backports. There's been a recent interest in improving the ability to have people straddling the line between Python 2 and Python 3, because the kind of blessed way now, and it's been for a while, to make the application work is by having a single source. Back a while ago, running 2 to 3 at release time was the way. Does not work very well. A lot of people weren't using it. Also, having a dual source, so we have a 2 tree and a 3 tree, it's kind of painful. So anything we can do to make 2.7 easier to use with thinking about moving forward with 3 is something I think we're going to see more of in the next coming releases. So there's, from that, the language summit, there was a bunch of topics on how we can do that. And a mailing list was created, and they had come up with a bunch of ideas. This was Alex Gaynor and Cliff Lefkowitz, about kind of continuing the effort in making sure that 2.7 is something that people can jump to 3 easier. So maybe we've all seen the thing where you can support 2.5 and 3.1 at one point. If you can get rid of 2.5 and move to 2.6, the gap is a little closer. You can go to 2.7. We're trying to make it so there's always going to be a gap to some degree. They're different languages fundamentally. They have the different Unicode stuff, and I know Armin has talked about that stuff, and I'll leave that to him. But anything we can do to make those gaps smaller and to make it so people can, with a minimal amount of effort, move forward is something I think we're going to do. And I think that comes with, like in Python 3, I believe it was 3.4 was the first time this happened, where the ensure pip feature makes sure that you have pip available so that people can get packages more easily. If you use Windows and you've used older versions, it's kind of a hassle. If you get pip on there, a lot of people haven't known about that. It's getting more popular, obviously. It's virtualized with pip with some of the top-down things from the package index. But making sure that's in 2.7 will make sure people can move more easily. Additionally, a lot of warnings have been silenced, and that made it a little bit harder to, with your reporting efforts, to make sure that you're notified of a lot of things. There's been talk of making some of those warnings louder, adding more of them. These would be things like when you're using the print statement, to make that a warning so that it's more obvious to you that moving forward you're not going to be able to use that. Same thing with importing stuff from like URL lib. If you import the old way, the way it works in 2.7, it would be nice to have a hint that, yeah, this is actually going to stop working in the future. And so people can, as they run their tests and it comes out of their logging, they can see that stuff and potentially use 6 to take care of some of that stuff. There's also been some talk around smarter tooling with improving 2 to 3, or using some of the things that build on top of it, like Python Modernize, Python Future, a couple of those tools to help people's kind of automation in those efforts, to work on those and build on those, and potentially include some of those, and whatever we can do to make that stuff work better. Another question that comes up quite often is, when is Python 2.8 coming? It's not. It's very hard to maintain another release of the Python 2 branch. We've already lost a couple of contributors that are not interested in working on Python 2 anymore, and not many have shown up to continue that effort. So it's kind of discouraging when you see blogs around that say, these people should know that what the answer is continue working on 2.8. I do this in my free time, so I'm going to do what I want. And I can tell you for damn sure it's not 2.8. I think if people want to see 2.8, it's going to have to be from themselves, a commercial vendor. I think the way 2.7 is going and being more open to fixing itself to ease the transition to Python 3. Hopefully there's a lot of things in there that will make that better in terms of, and also being from the 3 side, how those two improve may not exactly be a 2.8, but I think it solves a lot of the same goals, but it has the ability to. Someone still has to write all the code. And I don't see a lot of volunteers for 2.8 actually being written or maintained or released. Actually just doing the releases of any of these point releases down the line is a lot of work. The Windows installer now was originally done for a very long time by Martin Lewis. He just felt it was time for him to move on, and he doesn't do the 2.7 ones anymore. We have we got from Microsoft now who took those over to make sure they keep going, but someone else is going to have to do it for 2.8 because I can't see a lot of people lining up to do those things. So that is something that's going to have to happen. If people want 2.8, they're going to have to do it. It's not really going to come from the same group. Because a lot of that effort is moved on to Python 3, and those contributors are very happy doing that. So at the same time, there is 3x going. That is the branch that's moving forward. 3.4 was released in March, so it's been out a couple months now. 14 new cups were implemented. A lot of really good stuff in there, including 5 new modules. Andrew talked earlier about async.io. I think that's going to take a while for people to wrap their heads around that one and build new stuff on it. But it opens doors for a lot of really cool things. We'll have to see what comes out of that. Additionally, the enum and pathway modules, statistics, which allows you to do all kinds of like mean, median, mode, and standard deviation calculations. TraceMalloc, which is a debug tool for memory allocations. So a couple of cool things that go on in there. Async.io being one of those, so-called carrots to kind of get people over. But I think, as we see a good implementation of that, and a good use of that, and people start, getting beyond the kind of simple like web crawler stuff and build some really cool stuff with it. I think that's something that could potentially draw people. And additionally, 3.5, as 3.4 was released, actually once the beta cycle, the 3.5 branch opened up. There's still kind of planning going on in terms of what's going to happen there. One of the things that's been announced so far is that PEP 465, the matrix multiplication operator, has been accepted. And that's big for kind of the NumPy area. And science in general is really big on Python 3. NumPy, SciPy, Matplotlib, a lot of those tools, scikit-learn, a lot of stuff, has supported Python 3 for a long time. And Python 3 is gaining a lot of ground in science. I'm actually going to go to the SciPy conference in Texas in July and talk to a lot of the developers, a lot of those projects, and see what we can do to make things even better, to get a lot of the users along. Because a lot of people at this point don't even know, and it's kind of funny to see this, that people say, I want to use Python 3, but I use NumPy. NumPy has been supported on Python 3 for like 4 or 5 years by this point. It's about 4 years. And then you also see I want to use Python 3, but I use NumPy and Matplotlib. Well, Matplotlib's been supported for, I believe it's a little over a year and a half now. So part of this is actually a social problem, getting people to understand that the things they want to use are actually supported. I want to touch on a couple of things here for some resources as well to help you and your projects move on to Python 3 and how the Python Software Foundation can help you do that. If money is the issue, everyone has a job, everyone has things they need to be doing, not everyone has tons of free time. If we could buy our way into having important projects to Python 3, we would like to do that. We've done that a couple times. Basically pay people to spend a week or two, full-time, whatever it takes, and move their projects on. Python.org/psf/grants contains a lot of good information on what a good grant should have, what we're looking for in terms of the request, in terms of a lot of the details we look for. These are voted out by the board of directors. And kind of a little high level of what we look for is high-impact projects. It's tough for us to spend money where it's not going to make a lot of impact in the community. So if you made your own little web framework and only you use it, it's hard for us to justify giving you money to support that. But if, for example, other big projects like Fabric. So yeah, Fabric's a good one. If Fabric wanted to move to Python 3, and it's one of the bigger ones that is not on Python 3, if they wanted to put together a grant, that's something we'd evaluate. And that's a high-impact project. It's also more of a tool, so I'm not sure specifically that one matters, because you probably don't have it's like the same thing as material running on Python 3. It's a good thing, but it's a tool in the end versus a library. But it's a good example. Also a good plan. We want to make sure that if we're going to be giving money to a high-impact project, that they're going to use the money wisely, execute the port wisely, and promote and get the things out there in a good manner, and make sure that it's a good use of money. Additionally, it's an affordable rate. We want to enable people to get things done, but we need to be able to share the money with all the other projects. Because I'd love to have everyone in here on a high-level project doing this, but if we need to make sure we're spending the money in the right areas. We try to work with people to make sure that it's an affordable project for us, and that it benefits the community in the right way. A couple of examples where people have taken advantage of this. David Murray, who maintains a lot of the email stuff in Python. He's a core developer, he's a really good mentor, he's a really good guy if you're ever in the Python-dev IRC channel. He's put together a grant in the past to port email to move forward. And that got him over a lot of the Unicode and bytes issues, a lot of restructuring. Spent a good amount of time making that really nice and moving forward. Brett Cannon is another developer who, his grant was more towards some administrative stuff. Part of it was writing a porting guide, kind of aggregating a lot of the other guides that had been written, and putting something actually on docs.python.org to make sure we had something of our own out there. And he worked with all the people that had written the other guides, so that was a good effort. He also wrote the developer guide at the same time, worked on some other things. Jean-Paul Calderon of the Twisted project fame did a grant to port PyOpenSSL to Python 3. Chris McDonough ported WebOb, and there have been grants to both the Kivy and LTK projects. I'm not sure where the Kivy one is. I believe that was a partial grant. I know they've done some things with that. NLTK, I believe is finished. I don't believe it's released. There may or may not be a beta from what I've heard. But those are things that we know those are more recent ones, and we're hoping to see the results of those. Additionally, DSF has a committee for sprint funding. We're able to support individual sprints with up to $300 US, which is roughly 10,500 rubles. We do that by reimbursement. So if you wanted to get a bunch of people together and work on reporting a project or make a new project, or really anything that benefits the Python community, we love to see these things used for Python 3 stuff. We can buy you lunch, buy you dinner, buy you coffee, rent your space. All you have to do is just tell us what you're going to hack on, who's going to be there, what benefits, and we can send you money and make sure we can put together a little event for you. A lot of people use it for food. We have also seen the Cape Town Python users group in South Africa. They like to use it for gifts. They've always put together like coffee mugs. They made socks one time. They do a lot of stuff. A couple of the ports that we've seen, the Python 3 sprints, and we've supported many more than Python 3 sprints. We've supported a number of Django sprints, a number of ones at conferences. But both Genshi and Matplotlib were ported, or started big porting efforts by that Cape Town group. Scikit-learn is a project that we supported their sprint in Paris. I believe it was last year. They had a bunch of people get together and hack on it. We sent them some money. There have been a number of standard library sprints that mostly didn't happen at conferences. We'll get a number of locations around the U.S. There was one in Romania. It happened with the Montreal Python group, where PyCon was. Also in Toronto. And then there's been a number of the conference ones that I've seen. And those are really great because they're a good opportunity to get your hands wet and really figure out what's going on and contribute to the standard library if you're at one of those, or get together with a group of 4 or 5 people and pick a project and start hacking on it. And that's what the group in Cape Town did. They decided, hey, Matplotlib is something we'd like to see on Python 3. We've all toyed around with it. We've used it here and there. Let's just go ahead and do it. And they sat down for a day, did it. I believe that's when we bought them the coffee mugs. And that ended up seeing its way into Matplotlib's upstream, and sometime later it was actually merged. So a lot of that stuff is really beneficial, and we like to help and any way we can do, any way we can, make sure those people have the incentive and the ability to do those things and come together. So really, I think given the way a lot of those numbers are looking, Python 3 is doing pretty well. A lot of people like to say, Python 3 is killing the community and killing Python, and it's all going to go away and it's all running. I don't think it looks that way if you look at the numbers. And again, the numbers are just one indication. There's a lot of other things that they don't cover. Windows downloads are not the most reliable indication, but they're useful. The PyPI stuff is also useful. I think what I'm going to end up doing is taking some of these numbers, adding to them when I can have a chance to look at the PyPI server-side stuff and see where things are being downloaded from. That'll be a better indication of where things are used from. And we kind of put that together with this, the previous charts I had shown, and get a better sense of where things are actually going. But overall, it's not really a bad thing. People used to harp on that 5-year thing. At this point, we're kind of hitting a turning point, and we really have in that Python 3 is starting to take over by some of those metrics. So overall, the outlook is good. I think if you haven't looked at Python 3, you should probably start taking the time to do it. Users are eventually going to be asking you. People, they're asking other people. So we saw that 22% of those are supporting Python 3. So I know there are a lot of reasons not to do it, but I think it's a good time. And before it really picks up, try to get in there and play with it and let us know what you think. Let the developers know and talk about it and see what people can do to help you through those things, or see what the core developers can do to kind of ease that transition pain over time. I guess we have time for questions if anyone has any.
Thanks for the talk. First of all, I want to thank you for these efforts to move into Python 3. And the first thing I want to say you is that on your place, I'm really just gather people around and say everyone who used 2.7 can beep themselves, something like that, because you're dragging us down. Something like that. I'm really amazed by your patience for moving people forward. But I also understand that there is a reasons for people to be in Python 2.7. It's not like every one of them just lazy. Some of them have to use for some reasons. So I want to short story and question. The story is the Apple have a problem when moving from macOS 9 to macOS 10. So what did they do? They built a virtual environment on macOS 10 and then just forced people to move there. But every program was working on macOS 10, but it was working in the emulator. And later on, they just removed this emulator and only 2-3 people was suffering at the time, but who cares? And the result is, the main thing is, what do you think about this whole idea? Just build like virtual environment in Python 3, like with Python 2.7. So everyone can use just one Python 3.0 environment. And I don't know how to organize this or how crazy this idea is, but I just want to ask about this. What do you think about that?
So the first thing you said about how people have a reason for being on 2.7, and myself and all the developers totally get that. Like people have businesses that are built on 2.7. There are huge banks, huge companies that have potentially millions of lines of code that work on 2.7, and they're certainly not going to stop running their business and making their money just to move to a new Python version. Doesn't make sense. If we could make it so that transition doesn't cost millions of dollars or whatever it is in terms of developer hours spent on a language versus building a business, if we could do that by shortening the gap to where it's maybe a couple of days worth of effort or something like that, that'd be great. And doing it in kind of that virtual environment, I believe that's actually the way the PyPy project had been going about their supporting Python 3 from one interpreter. I'm not sure if that's still the case. I know that was a goal that they had to where you should be able to run 2 and 3 on one versus having different interpreters. In terms of that happening in CPython, the reference interpreter, I don't know if that's something that can actually be done. I've heard talk about that to where make it so it doesn't totally matter what source you give it, it will just run Python. That seems like it'll be very, very hard to do. And I think that's also something that I don't know that there's a lot of interest in creating that on the, from the core developer side, because I think, a lot of the distinctions have been made, and I think they're kind of pretty tightly ingrained in those interpreters. So making one that crosses both of them would be really cool. It would make things a lot easier, but I'm not sure if that'll happen without a lot of effort from potentially commercial, interests or people coming out to do it. But I'm not sure that's something that would just come out of if you just throw it out there and people do it. But it's a possibility. Armin.
I'm not going to start ranting here. I just want to give a point to this. You cannot actually make this work, which is the unfortunate part, because this is what people try to do first. The Python 2 and Python 3 interpreter are inherently compatible. So you cannot have a layer that supports them both. It just does not work. So that's kind of where this whole thing falls apart, because it changed not just on the language level, like syntactical changes and text model. I think the biggest mistake Python 3 made is that the extension interface that CPython has for extensions is a very, very simple C API. And all of the symbols that extensions use to call into the interpreter, they are the same between Python 2 and Python 3. So because they are not binary compatible on the C level, the moment you load into a C extension or any C module, these interpreters will not be able to reside in the same process space. I tried very early on when Python 3.0 was released, I tried to make a hack of using a C preprocessor to rename all the symbols. But even that doesn't work because once you have solved the problem with the C extensions, you run into this issue where sys modules have certain behaviors on how everything expects it to work. And when you didn't have a Python 2 module, Python 3 module, they still would expect to overlap some of these things. And it's just, like, even if you would solve it on the whole C level, then the moment you have like a Python 2 and Python 3 interpreter running in the same process space, if they try to access the same, say, open SSL library, they're going to clash because they all expect this thing to work in a certain way and it just doesn't. Like, this is absolutely impossible. It will never ever happen, and any effort spent on this, just, people have tried this before, you cannot do this. And I think that's where part of this problem comes. But the only other thing I want to say is, like, from all the numbers, like, they look kind of fancy on those slides, but the biggest problem is that I think less than 6% of PyPI downloads are Python 3. And they're way less than 5% for me, and that was last month. And I'm spending more than 50% of my time trying to make Python 3 work. And that's just the thing that really disappoints me, because it's such a small user base, and it doesn't seem to grow. And I'm spending so much time on this. And I think at one point we have to at least have an honest discussion and trying to figure out how to go forward with this, because clearly the initial plan of 5 years has absolutely failed, and we're still, like, we're not moving anywhere, and we're just destroying this whole community by not having an honest discussion about how we can fix this problem, because saying, no, we're not going to maintain Python 2 anymore, it's just going to send the message to companies that, oh yeah, your development environment you have put all your efforts behind is now no longer supported. Use this other thing over there and rewrite everything. And that's just not a good message to send. I think we have to have a really good discussion. I mean, I can see that I'm definitely not the person to have this discussion with, because all my blog posts on this topic have been very ranty, so I'm assuming that I've lost a little bit of a point to make by just being too aggressive about how I make this. But there are many other people that sit in the same situation, and I know a lot of companies are. I'm pretty sure if you would have a discussion with those, you would maybe figure out how the situation looks like for them. And that's all from my side.
I think while your blog posts are ranty, I think you have good information behind them, whereas other people come off ranty with no information. So I think that they're certainly valuable, and you're someone who would be absolutely a part of that conversation. So hopefully we find a chance to sit down and actually have that and see what we can do to figure out how to move forward from this. Perhaps at the next language summit. Any other questions?
Thank you. The only thing I can ask is a global interpreter lock. Do you plan any work to remove it from Python forever?
No. So removing it is an incredibly hard task. Keeping it there makes it so you can write the Python that you can write right now. People have made attempts at it, have made certain amounts of progress, but it's one of those things where it takes 10% of the time to do 90% of the work, and getting that last bit to work without sacrificing close to anything is very hard. So I don't believe anyone's actively pursuing that right now. Except on PyPy, I know, I believe there's still work on the STM stuff. Is that still the case? You know?
Okay, and now one question. If you will ever change your opinion about this question, will it born a new version of Python, Python 4? It will be incompatible with first version, and it will be just a new rate of incompatibility.
As far as I know, and I'm not really I've never attempted to remove the guild myself or anything like that, but from what I've been told, if you were to remove it entirely, it would be yet another, you'd have to write things slightly differently, it would likely be backwards incompatible, you'd have to do things, you have to think about things more different, so it is probably likely that would be a fork of, and it becomes a different language, or that's Python 4, and we break everyone once again, or something like that. But I don't think that's something that could actually happen in the Python 3 kind of branch, to where it's something that could actually happen and be useful and be not totally different, or not at least different enough to where it's not still Python.
Well, and last one is just thank you for Unicode streams. Thank you for exception during exception. Thank you for all those things, new style classes and so on, things that you added in Python 3 as default things, without any monkey tails on some artifacts from Python second version. Just thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any more questions? Thank you, Brian.